And welcome back to the Correspondents on Voice of America. I'm Mil Arcega in Washington. Well, you know, we pride ourselves as a nation of immigrants. And yet to date, no Muslim American immigrant has ever held national political office in the United States. Very few currently serve in local government. In fact, in the U.S. Congress right now, only 1%, that's 6 members, are immigrants. But in this election year, some Muslim Americans are trying to change that, campaigning for office at local, state, and national levels throughout the United States. VOA's Midwest correspondent Kane Farabaugh decided to take a closer look with a 30-minute documentary he produced called Faith in Freedom. Here's a brief excerpt from that documentary.
I think faith has absolutely nothing to do with the job. I think that even nationality have nothing to do with the job.
I don't know how many people actually see this as an urgency.
I just feel like there's a crisis of democracy. I am a social guy. I like helping people.
I'm running to be the voice for my district.
I love our community, and I love the American dream.
It is great that somebody who's from another country, somebody who didn't learn English until he was 14, might be my representative.
Tonight was my first council meeting. I can't miss my first council meeting.
I wish it just didn't come down to these identity things.
And we're having a conversation nationally about religion, about race.
There are also some people think having a Muslim will hurt the party.
Now, I had a chance to sit down this week with VOA correspondent Kane Farabaugh to talk in depth about why he made this documentary. Again, it's called Faith in Freedom. Here's a bit of that interview. So over the summer, you followed 4 Muslim Americans pursuing their dream of running for political office. Why did you feel it was important to tell their story?
Well, it's a story that really hasn't been told before. And even though many of the races that I was following have sort of culminated this summer, it's been a process that really began at the end of last year. We identified some of these candidates that were running for some local and state offices, and I did some news reporting basically about these races. And over the course then, as the primary season wore on and the elections were taking place across the country, I was able to sort of watch the results of these candidates unfold, and I realized at the end of the primary season we might have an interesting story here that focused on this.
Because you're looking at the this political race from a totally different perspective. Let me just run some facts by you, because your film opens with a very sobering statistic in that in the year 2000 there were some 700 Muslim Americans running for office, but by 2002 that number had dropped to 70. Now that seems to imply that that 9/11 seemed to have changed American perceptions about the religion, Islam, and Muslim Americans in general. Would you agree?
And that certainly probably kept people out of the races, off the ballots. You know, there was a general fear factor. One of the people that we talked to, who is now one of the leaders of the American Muslim Democratic Caucus, you know, explained that it wasn't an environment conducive or helpful for someone with that background to run in.
So, Kane, here we are 15 years later, and we are probably looking at one of the most politically heated election cycles that we've seen for some time. A lot of xenophobia seems to be coming out of some of the particular races. What does it feel to be a Muslim American trying to get involved politically during this election cycle?
It's a difficult environment. I mean, even though it's 15 years later, there is still rhetoric out there. There is still, you know, unfair stereotypes. There is still Islamophobia. So there is this general sense of uneasiness if you're a Muslim American as to whether or not you're going to be successful if you decide to run for office. And so many of these people were focusing on understanding that that is a part of the national mood, especially since it's been amplified by some of the presidential candidates on the campaign trail. This is the environment they're operating in. But imagine that being the environment, they're still deciding that they want to represent this small but growing minority. The
practical considerations are this. You spoke to one of the candidates that was featured in your film, and he was told quite bluntly by political leaders that, hey, you have zero chance of winning. I mean, how does How does a Muslim American candidate take something like that?
I mean, it completely takes the rug out from underneath him, so to speak. I mean, what he needed in order to get an endorsement by the leader of the Democratic Party in Nevada was an endorsement to help him have some kind of ground campaign that had people knocking on doors for him, money raised. All of this comes about with that party support and that endorsement. Failing to get that winds up leaving you on your own to fend for yourself and, generating name recognition, just basically generating support for your candidacy. And in the end, this candidate we're talking about is Jesse Spey, who ran for the 3rd Congressional District Democratic seat in Nevada.
And he was told flat out by Nevada leadership that forget it.
That's right. Actually, no Muslim can win this race. But he actually decided to persevere. That's what he was told. He says he was told in the meeting. But he decided to persevere and move on by funding his campaign by himself. He endorsed Bernie Sanders. He hoped to generate some of the support of his supporters and went all the way to that primary election day.
One particular candidate in the presidential race has been specifically very anti-immigrant in his rhetoric, raising a lot of suspicions about the motivations of particularly Muslim Americans in this country. How does a Muslim American community respond to that, and how are these politicians, these Muslim American politicians, going to try to fight that tide of xenophobia?
There is one candidate in particular we focus on in the program, and his name is Asad Al-Masmari. He's from Yemen. He's a Yemeni immigrant, and he is now a member of the Hamtramck, Michigan City Council Board, which is now a Muslim-majority city council. And his election last fall came around the same time that some of his presidential candidates on the campaign trail were making comments that Muslims should be banned from coming into the United States. But here is an example of somebody who was an immigrant, a Muslim immigrant, coming into this country, seeking elected office, seeking to represent his community, and he's now a part of a Muslim-majority city council body in an American city. And so this obviously generated a lot of attention, a lot of publicity, especially around that time. And what happened was he was actually contacted by somebody in Donald Trump's campaign. He tells us if he could spend maybe 15 or 20 minutes with Mr. Trump. And when I asked him about what he had planned to do, he said, well, I just don't have time. I'm too busy working on the city council here to meet with Mr. Trump right now.
He rejected a meeting with Donald Trump.
Yeah.
But there's a sense I get that Muslim Americans are feeling like Latinos in this country are feeling a little bit galvanized because so much of the focus, so much of the anger it has been focused on them.
I think what they feel is that if you want to have a say in government, this is the process by which you have to become more involved. You have to seek office. You have to find ways in which you can actually have your voices heard. And in our democratic system, this is one of those effective ways in making sure that the needs and the concerns of the Muslim community are well represented in government.
It's interesting because one of the accusations that is often leveled is Muslim Americans are difficult to assimilate in any culture and they try to maintain their own little cliques. But in fact, politics is the answer to assimilation, isn't it?
Yeah, I think that's really, by what they're demonstrating here, is they are becoming involved. Any criticism that is generated against them for, not speaking out or not becoming more aware of their environment and their communities, this is the example they're trying to set by saying, look, we actually do care. We are just the same as you, and we want to become as much a part of this important democratic system that you're a part of, and this is the way that we want to make sure that you understand that we are trying to represent.
The title of your documentary is Faith in Freedom. I initially thought it was Faith and Freedom, but in fact, Faith in Freedom says so much, doesn't it?
I think so, because we are a free country, we're a free society, and their faith is very much a part of their election process. But then again, too, they have faith in our democratic system. I think that the alliteration of the title is also hopefully, a very appropriate way to sort of describe what these candidates feel.
And my thanks to VOA's Kane Farabaugh. I hope that documentary inspires a lot of immigrants. Now, you can watch the rest of his documentary on our website at voanews.com. I promise you it's an eye-opener. Time for another break right now, but when we come back, a recap of the third and final U.S. presidential debate between Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump. And just a reminder, we want to hear from you. Share your thoughts, questions, and comments on our Facebook page. The address is VOA Correspondents. We'll be right back.